At this time of year especially, I think we write off the year and we just start living for the holidays. If we had any goals that we set at the start of the year, we kind of forget about those and we start to say, do you know, next year I'm going to do this. Next year I'm going to start that thing I've always wanted to start. But next year is actually really far away. You might be feeling like 2024 has already passed you by, but I'm here to tell you that there is still so much time left in this year to create a life that you truly love. I feel like in the last 90 days, I've completely changed my life and people have told me that I look completely different and I'm unrecognizable in some ways. I'm going to share with you how you can change your life in the next 90 days using the 12-week year planning system. The key idea, you can get more done in 12 weeks than most people do in 12 months. 12 months is way too long to try and focus on a couple of goals that can really change your life, whereas 12 weeks is the ideal time. You can stay motivated for 12 weeks. You can make a huge change in 12 weeks when you're focusing on 3 or 4 goals that will lead you much closer to the life that you want. And this is how. The first thing that you will need to do is to create a compelling vision for your life. This is an idea of what you want your life to look like. Without thinking of the life that you want to lead, it's virtually impossible to create goals that are actually meaningful to you and that when you achieve them, you'll actually feel a strong sense of fulfillment. This is one of the number one mistakes I see people making with goal setting. They set these goals, they achieve them, but then they don't actually feel any better. Oftentimes, that's because our goals are not set in line with some meaningful life values that we have. There are 3 exercises that can help when determining a vision for your life. One would be to create a vision board. This is something that you typically see people doing in this late stage of the year. They're creating a vision board for the next year, but it's also useful to create one for your long term, what you see in 5 years and more for your life. If you're not really someone who responds well to the visual elements, you could instead do the same thing journaling, where you journal about what you want the different aspects of your life to look like in the long term. So how do you want your health to be? How do you want your family life to be? What do you envision for your career, and so on. The second exercise that can help with this is to map out your ideal day. So in an ideal world, sometime in the future, what does an ideal day for you look like? For example, for me, I know that I have a solid morning routine that would be my ideal morning, but in terms of what I want the actual day to look like, ideally that for me would look like working on creative activities throughout the day, whether that's working on my YouTube channel, working on acting, performing, training, and various other things that are all to do with creative fulfillment. And some of that would be entrepreneurship, but I don't, for example, see myself spending time the way I have for the last several years, which is at the desk all the time, responding to admin emails all the time, being overwhelmed by all of the different commitments I have with research and business running and so on. That's what my day looks like, because that's what my day has looked like for the last 4 or 5 years, and going forward, that's not what I want my day to look like. The other one that can help but is kind of dark is to look way forward out after you've passed, after you've died. What would you want your tombstone to read? Or what would you want to be said about you once you have died? And is that in line with what you're doing right now? A bonus one is to think about, and kind of in the same line, is to think, if I continue the way I am right now, what will my life look like in 5, 10, 20 years? Do that for the different aspects of life. If I continue the way I am right now from a health perspective, what will my life look like in 20 years? What will my relationships look like? What will my work look like? Can kind of help you figure out whether you're on the path towards what it is that you're wanting for your life. When it comes to figuring out what goals you want to achieve in these last 12 weeks of the year, I would encourage you to think a little bit about what Q4 means in a business context. So if you're running a business, typically Q4 will be one of 2 things or a combination of both. One being figuring out how you can finish the year strong and try and meet those final quotas that you might have. The other side of it is planning for the next year. So we've kind of already put everything in place from the previous quarters of the year, and now we're looking towards next year and seeing what it is we want for next year. Oftentimes we can get really overwhelmed at the start of the year because we have all of these ideas for what next year will look like, Whereas if we spend this time of the year laying the foundations for that, that can be a huge help for when we come into the new year. It's really important that the goals that you set during these 12 weeks are ones that are going to be leading you towards the life that you want. Otherwise, after a couple weeks, you're not really going to care about them anymore. Typically in the 12-week year, we're aiming to set somewhere between 3 and 4 goals. So we don't want to have a long list of goals that can get us quite sidetracked. We instead want to focus really directly on 3 or 4 goals, the ones that will make the biggest impact. If you're leaning more towards finishing the year strong, then something that you can do is look back at the goals that you set at the beginning of the year, if you did set any, or in your last goal setting cycle, and see which of these goals would lead you most towards the vision that you have for your life, or which would make the strongest impact in your life if you were to achieve these in the next 12 weeks. Another really useful tool that you can use when you're trying to determine what goals to set is to do an areas of life evaluation. So ideally you will have an areas of focus list, which I've mentioned in another video, but this is essentially an overview of all of the different areas of responsibility that you have in your life. And what you can do is rate yourself on how you think you're doing in all of these areas of life, and then pick the ones that have the most work that needs to be done and see what you can now do in the next 12 weeks to improve the score for those. For example, if you have been not spending as much time with your family, or your family score is low, maybe that's a goal to work on for these next 12 weeks. Whereas if already your health and fitness stuff is going really well, then that might be something that you don't necessarily need to put as one of your 12-week goals, because you're already working towards those without much need of a push. The idea of the 12-week year goals is that we're picking things that are going to have a big impact and are things that we really need a push towards working on. Since we are in the final quarter of the year and we're starting to think about next year, I would encourage you to also think about what is it that you either do or don't want to carry with you into 2025. So are there any changes that we can make in these 12 weeks that will have us starting off 2025 the way that we want it to look? For example, if you've been wanting to start a health and fitness goal for a really long time and haven't managed to do that this year, maybe you wanted to start a daily exercise routine, for example, rather than leaving that till 2025, if this is something you feel will make a big impact in your life, why not do this now so that when you start 2025, you'll already have laid the groundwork. For example, I'm really looking forward to that idea of time freedom. I'm also wanting to get a mortgage next year. And then finally, being able to engage full-time with creative work. I have some goals for this Q4 period that relate to that. One is to finish up my research responsibilities. This is something I do need to push towards because it's something I've not been very motivated for. But I really want to finish up my research work that I have my contract ending in January, and I want to finish it strong. I don't want to have this unfinished business around my PhD and around my research work. I want it to be over, and I want to feel like I can just draw a line under it and be done. The other couple of goals that I have, one is a slightly longer term goal of outsourcing my work, but I have specific goals within this quarter for outsourcing a portion of my work that I have been doing myself over the last year and several years. And then the other one that I'm focusing on is applying for drama school. This is the period that the auditions start, and I want to get in early for these auditions because I'd ideally like to be starting in drama school next September. But to be honest, it's unlikely. But I do need to know sooner rather than later and get my auditions in sooner rather than later. So if I want to live that life next year, I need to focus on this now. The fourth and final goal that I'm working on for this term is sorting out my finances, because my personal finances for the last couple of years have been a bit of a mess. I've been way overspending, and also I had some issues where I wasn't being paid for quite a significant portion of this year. I'm also setting up a pension, and I have some tax stuff to finish up from last year before the tax deadline. Just a lot of things that I need to do. If we want to apply for a mortgage next year, we need to have 6 months of clean bank statements. So I really need to get on that now so that when we come to applying for a mortgage, we'll have everything ready to go. So each of those goals Some are about finishing off the year strong with regards to letting go of that research work and just getting it done. Some are more bringing me towards, again, that vision for my life, which is financial security, time freedom, creative work. But these are all connected to the idea that I have, or the vision that I have for my life. The next thing that will be important is creating a plan. So the 12-week year process is all about having a really solid 12-week plan that you are going to stick to rigorously for 12 weeks. There may be some tasks that you need to achieve at different stages in the process, so you'll want to have those put in place for different weeks in your 12 weeks. You'll also probably have different periods of time in each week that you'll need to dedicate to each specific goal that you want to work towards. And it's really important that you make this plan before you begin, because otherwise there might be certain things that delay you from actually picking up certain habits that you need to do. Something from the book Atomic Habits can be really helpful, where you're essentially following the process of habit stacking. That is bringing in habits on top of habits that you already do. For example, if you already wake up every morning and do journaling, you could then, if your goal is to add meditation this next 12 weeks, you can add that in after your journaling. So you're trying to add in habits where you already have habits. Have a look through your morning routine, your evening routine, and your work day if you follow a typical work day, to see where you can fit in time for each of those specific goals that you have, especially the ones that will require more habitual, regular work. I would encourage you to create a schedule of what your time looks like at the moment and figure out where you have blocks of time that you'll be able to work towards your goals. In some cases, you will need quite a large block in a given week, 3 or 4 hours back to back for working on something. In other cases, it might be an hour a day that you can work towards that. For example, with my creative work, so with my auditions for drama school, I'd probably want to spend 3 different hours a week working on that, whereas doing that back to back would be not that beneficial, because I kind of want to leave the work set in over those couple sessions. If you had, for example, my research work, I want to finish that up strong, I need to find in my week 3 or 4 hours back to back a couple times a week to be able to achieve that work. It's about going through your weekly schedule and figuring out, where can I fit in those blocks of time to work towards those different goals? And clearly labeling that time and making that time non-negotiable. For the ones that require projects and actions, and sometimes these goals will have a combination of both, clearly map out what are the projects that will need to be done within this specific goal and what are the habits within those, and figure out in your 12-week timeline when those need to occur. Lots of them will need to occur sooner rather than later, and you might have a couple of weeks of setup that will then lead into the habits that happen thereafter. For example, if you have a goal around starting daily exercise, there might be a project there around joining a gym, getting all the equipment and clothes that you need, for example, figuring out your route, all of these different things that can take place in the first week, and then you can begin your process of daily exercise. Whereas if you haven't figured out that project, there'll be this kind of delay that happens and this procrastination that happens because you haven't figured out what you need to do before you can actually start the work that you need to do in terms of daily exercise in this case. The final idea here is around accountability and tracking your progress. The 12-week year specifically is really rigorous around tracking your progress, and they want you to figure out some scoring metrics that you can then use to score your week. They encourage you to use a mixture of lag and lead indicators. I always forget which one is which. One of those indicators will be the kind of input. For example, if you have a goal of reaching 50,000 YouTube subscribers, your input metrics will be how many videos you produced and how many videos you uploaded in that time. So you'd be able to, let's say if you had a goal, then within that goal you're planning on doing 3 videos a week, then you would be scoring how many videos you actually uploaded each week. You'd then have an output metric, which would be, in this case, maybe views on videos or subscribers on videos. They really encourage you to focus on these input variables when you're scoring your week, because often the output is somewhat out of our control, However, it's useful to track the output variables because you may find some connection between, for example, the types of videos that you are producing in a given week and the increase in the output variable. So maybe certain videos are leading to more views, more subscribers, whereas other videos not so much. And that will then lead you forward into your future weeks of planning. They encourage you to do each week a weekly score or a weekly review of how you progress towards those goals. They also encourage a weekly accountability meeting. So if you have any friends who are looking to maybe have some goals over the next 12 weeks as well, that each week you will have an accountability meeting with those people to show them how you did with your goals. You can also find different online groups that might offer this, but most importantly, have a weekly accountability meeting with yourself. Sit yourself down and say, well, let's take a look at the score for the week. How did we do? Maybe not so good, maybe we did okay. And see what are we going to change next week if we need to make sure that we get a higher score if we're not really reaching the score that we would like to get to. Other ideas for accountability would be maybe do what I do, which is make a video about it, because then people are kind of interested in waiting to see if you actually did what you said you were going to do. You could comment it down below on this video, maybe, and I'll follow up with you in a couple weeks and see how you're doing. You could tell a friend who might be interested in a specific goal that you have. Sometimes it can help if you have a couple different people who might be interested in the different types of goals that you've set. That is it for this video. I really hope that it's helpful for you to realize that you have the power in these last 12 weeks of the year to make a big change in your life. There is so much that can happen in this short period. It really just takes an idea of your life, so your vision. It takes some goals towards that vision, a plan to achieve those goals, and then some accountability of how you are going to track your progress towards those goals. I really hope that you have an amazing 12 weeks. I hope that you finish the year with everything that you want to achieve. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and follow the channel for more similar content. And I will see you all in the next video.